And good morning. Welcome back to Impact. It is my pleasure to welcome back an old friend from Kiana. Well, she's not old. She's very young, but we go back a long way, so far that I remember what she used to be called, but I won't mention that. Michelle Toner is with us this morning, the general manager of the Alberta Winter Games, the Wood Buffalo Alberta Winter Games.
That's right, 2018.
2018. They're just saying it is weird. 2018.
It's only 100 days away, which is even more weird.
Is it really 100 days like today?
Tomorrow we're 100 days out from the start of the event.
Man. Well, thank you for coming in, because I kept thinking of the word impact and the impact that games have on athletes for sure, but volunteers and the community as a whole. Did you have any sense when you got started this adventure what that really meant?
No, I don't think I had a complete picture. I was involved with the 2015 Western Canada Summer Games as a venue manager, and sport has always been a huge part of my life. And I see the impact it makes, with staff and with volunteers and with the athletes. But the full extent and the full breadth of what this involves and all the people that need to come together to make it happen, it was definitely an eye-opener for me.
How long have you been at it now?
So I started actually a year ago this week. So just over a year that I've been in the position. The board of directors started about 6 months before they hired me. And of course, there was a little bit of a gap there with the fire and determining whether or not we were going to be able to go ahead with the games, assessing if any facilities were damaged and if the community still really was going to be able to come together to provide an event that is quite extensive. There's a lot of moving parts. So yeah, there's been a lot of decisions made and a lot of things done in the last year.
The Western Canada Summer Games that you mentioned, maybe as a point of reference for listeners, how does the Alberta Winter Games compare to the Western Canada Summer Games in terms of both the number of participants and the scope and scale of it?
Yeah. So I guess if you look big picture, the Alberta Winter Games is more of a grassroots event. So you would go Alberta Winter Games, Western Canada Summer Games, Canada Games. So they somewhat feed into each other. And through that process, you see the difference in ages. So with Western Canada Summer Games, athletes could have been upwards of 21, 23, but most starting around that 15 to 16 age group. Mm-hmm. For Alberta Winter Games, some of the athletes are as young as 11. So 11 to 17. So, little kids, they're starting their competitive journey. They're starting to really grow in their sport. They're being identified as a potential leader in their sport. In terms of the number of athletes, we're very close to having the same number of athletes as Western Canada Summer Games, which I think is surprising to a lot of people, but they're all here at the same time. So with Western Canada Summer Games, there was 2 waves. First wave came in, there was a switchover day, they left. For us, we have a contingency of 2,800 people arriving on Friday, February 16th. So close to 2,000 athletes, 400 technical officials, and then 400 coaches and chaperones.
That's insane.
So it's a lot of people.
Wow.
A lot of people to bring into the community, move around, and then send them safely home.
Now, during the Western Canada Games, the athletes were put up at the Athletes Village outside of town. What are you guys doing in terms of accommodation?
So our accommodations, we're happy. We've been able to partner with both our public and Catholic school boards. They've been very supportive. And we will have the athletes staying in the schools. So I know lots of people who are in the community for Arctic Winter Games, first thing they say is, do we need to put together those bunk beds? It was one of the first stories I heard when I came to this community was about the 2004 bunk beds for the Arctic Winter Games. It definitely left a lasting impression. There are no bunk beds. The kids actually sleep in classrooms on mattresses type of thing that's provided by Alberta Sports. So they come with their own pillows and sleeping bags, and it's a little bit like a big sleepover. Because the athletes are younger, to have them staying in their own room by themselves just didn't really fit the athlete population. We really wanted to make sure that, for some of these kids, it's probably the first time they've been away from home, didn't have their parents traveling with them. The parents are not allowed to stay in the athlete village. They don't come to the athlete village. Parents aren't allowed to have their kids stay with them in the hotel. They stay together as a team in their village, and they're supervised by their coach and their chaperone. So we wanted to make sure that they felt safe being away from home.
It's taking me back to band trips and sleeping in the gymnasium with the band instructor in the middle of the floor telling people to be quiet.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to have 8 athlete villages.
Yeah.
Most of the schools, actually all of the schools are in Timberlea. And, through the planning process, it came about that we found out you can't sleep in a school unless there's sprinklers. So there's different rules about daytime use for a school and a school being used as accommodation site. So the 8 schools that we have were designated, the best fit and best able to accommodate our athletes.
I'm going to just say Michelle has no paper in front of her, so I'm going to test her. So tell us about the sports. What are the different sports in the games?
Yeah. So it's surprising, when we talk about volunteerism and people are like, oh, it's going to be so cold. The majority of our sports are actually indoors. So we do have some outdoor sports. We have cross-country skiing will be at Birchwood Trails. Biathlon will be at the Fort McMurray Gun Range. And then we have alpine skiing, freestyle skiing, and snowboarding will all take place at Vista Ridge. Then if I move from north to south, if you will, speed skating will be taking place in Anzac. And then women's hockey at the Casman Center. We have 7 different sports happening at McDonald Island Park. Synchronized swimming, curling, squash, judo, gymnastics, archery. I'm missing one.
Painting.
Yeah. No. We do have some painting activities happening, but
Awesome.
they're not competitive. The Sport and Wellness Center will be hosting wrestling and volleyball. Fencing will be at Father Merck. Boxing is at Westwood. And figure skating is at Frank Lacroix.
It's all over the region.
Oh, and Anzac. Anzac has ringette and badminton.
That's a lot of sports.
It is.
I am trying to picture the amount of volunteers on the organizational side that are putting this all together. How many are there?
We're looking for upwards of 2,000 volunteers. So we did hit, I think, 350 just this week, which is great. We just launched about a month ago in recruiting our volunteers because we know in this community, shifts change. People have, volunteer commitments or they have travel commitments, especially in the winter when it gets cold. So we didn't want to have people commit too early and then have to work through the changes of, oh, my shift changed or I changed jobs or things like that. So understanding our community. So we're working through that right now. You can go online and register at www.albertawintergames.ca. And what happens is you fill out your information and you click your 2 top choices and say, I want to do food center and athletes village, or I want to do fencing and boxing. And then once that happens, a volunteer coordinator from that portfolio will follow up with you and try and learn a little bit more. Do you have experience with a specific sport, or is this something you want to learn about? Because depending on the different roles, it really determines what type of volunteer we can have in that portfolio. We really want to make sure that there's an opportunity for our younger population as well to get involved. So kids 14 and older can volunteer. Between 14 and 17, you do need to volunteer with an adult. But there's lots of opportunities and lots of family opportunities for everyone to get involved and really contribute in different ways.
What do you think the impact is for people to get involved as a volunteer?
I really think it provides this opportunity to be part of something that is just bigger than yourself and just bigger than your own community. Athletes are from all across Alberta. So they're going to provide an opportunity for them to further their own dreams. They get to contribute to being ambassadors for our community. It gives people an opportunity to really speak to the great things that go on in this community, to teach people about, that we're more than oil. We definitely are oil, but there's more that goes on here than just industry, and that it is a great place to live. I think we're often misunderstood, and I think it really provides that opportunity for people to connect outside the community and really, even make lifelong friendships.
When you reflect back on the Western Canada Summer Games, do you have any encounters with outsiders and their reaction to Fort McMurray that popped to mind?
Yeah, I think one of my favorites was, our really northern teams, smaller contingencies, coming in and seeing the Sport and Wellness Center and just being blown away by the amenities that we have here. And just those comments, like, wow, I had no idea that these type of facilities existed in this community. I had no idea that you could do X, Y, and Z in Fort McMurray, or that it looked like it did, or it's pretty as it is. I know myself, the first time I came down Beacon Hill, I got picked up at the airport for my job interview, and as I was driving down in the valley, I thought, wow, this place looks nothing like I expected it to look. So I think it really, people are a little bit like the dog with the tilted head. Like, oh, wow, I had no idea this is what this place looks like.
It's a chance to change hearts and minds about our
Absolutely.
community. My guest this morning is Michelle Toner, who is the general manager of the Alberta Winter Games coming up in 2018. What are the dates, Michelle?
February 16th to 19th.
Just a hop, skip, and a jump away. 100 days effective tomorrow. We're going to come back with more of Impact right after this. And welcome back to the show. This is Impact, a team effort of a whole bunch of different organizations. United Way, Fuse Social, Shaw TV, who's here today filming us, and of course our friends at 91.1 The Bridge. It's a great venue for talking about things that matter in the community. And today we're talking about the impact of games. And we've got a major games coming up in February, the 2018 Wood Buffalo Alberta Winter Games. And Michelle Toner has been given the task of leading the charge. I'm very interested, Michelle. You've often been in charge of a lot of things during our Keanu years, but how has the experience been for you personally and professionally, being the leader of such a gargantuan effort?
I think the first thing, the first thing that I've noticed is there are far more contributors and far more decision makers in an event like this than there would, say, if we were running a national championship. So national championship, we did it 2 or 3 times at Keanu, small department, hardworking hands, everybody gets things done. Now we have, I have a board of 14, so 14 different portfolios that all have chairs, and those chairs all have committees. So if you can imagine at least 100 chairs, and plus their committees, plus the board, all trying to work together, it definitely is a different dynamic than when you have 5 or 6 people. You would never be able to accomplish it with just 5 or 6 people, so it's great, but it's definitely been an experience for me trying to figure out. I often liken it to herding cats. It's making sure that everybody who's making decisions knows about the decisions of the other people in the portfolio, and that everyone's still working forward for a common goal and that common task. But it's definitely different. And the other thing is that this is it's a project based. So after March, when my staff are finished, that's it. Games end in February, staff is done in March, then we're done. Whereas in the past, when we were doing championships at Keanu, it was the build-up and then kind of the post-wedding blues. Oh, it was so great. And then on to the next thing, but still always working as a team. So I think those things really create a different dynamic compared to when you're working with full-time staff. Not better, not worse, different.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
Email is the worst form of communication. Honestly, I really feel that it prevents people from getting things accomplished. It's great for documenting or creating a paper trail, but if you need a decision made or you need to talk to somebody, you need to pick up the phone or you need to go see them. So, I think we've become a society that, I'll email this person, but really all you're doing is putting the decision back on them and then waiting for a response, and nothing ever gets really resolved. And with so many dynamic working, moving parts, a lot of times one decision impacts 15 others from moving forward. So, I feel like I brought myself out of my comfort zone in that I use the phone more now than I ever have. And, a 5-minute phone call can save weeks of emailing back and forth.
Is it tough? A naive question, but if you have volunteers that are on the board or a committee member, is it tough connecting sometimes during the day because they have day jobs as well?
Absolutely. And I think that, given the structure that we do have 6 full-time staff, including myself, that sometimes we fill in the gaps with that communication, but we know that there's no expectation that if I email somebody in the middle of the day that they're going to get back to me right away. That being said, we have great people linked to our organization, and oftentimes they do get back to us right away, or we do schedule regular meetings so that there isn't that lag. But it definitely is an obstacle because we are in it all day, every day, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day, and everybody else is working and then coming and trying to contribute. So it can create, some, I don't know what you would say.
Friction.
Yes, that's exactly it. It can create some friction sometimes in moving forward, but for the most part, I think there's a general understanding that we're staff, you're volunteers, and there's going to be that dynamic.
This next question might be a double-edged sword, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Okay. So you have had the challenge of putting together a games during the aftermath of the biggest natural disaster in Canadian history, during a time when the economic impacts are really hitting home, and particularly right now, based on what I've observed. How has that been, and how has the games actually helped people overcome some difficult circumstances?
Well, if we look at things like sponsorship, the approach that we've taken is that we want to use the event as an opportunity for local business to share a message that they may have, to achieve some goals that they may have. If you look at the reason why a community hosts an event like this, really it's about economic impact. It's about impacting the community, the people who live there, the businesses that operate here. So we have really tried to make sure that in our approach, we recognize that we're not going to, I don't know if monopolize is the right word, but we're not going to use resources that we don't need for the sake of using them. We've really tried to be completely as fiscally responsible as we can, really questioning, do we need this? Do we not need that? So that we can work with our community partners. They can be involved. They can feel a part of the games. And really move forward. Games have a long history in our community. We've hosted the Alberta Winter Games before. We've hosted the Arctic Winter Games. We've hosted the Western Canada Summer Games. And I think for some people, especially those who are really linked to sport, coming back to another games really almost presents a sense of normalcy. Yeah. We've always done this. We will continue to do this. We might be okay. We're moving forward and we can do it again. So, some people didn't agree with the fact that we were going to host the games and that maybe energy should have been spent on other things. But I think for a lot of people, sport creates such a unification and a bringing together that having this event made people feel okay that we were where we were in our community.
You described two things. One, that the number of athletes and officials coming in will be similar in scope to the Western Canada Summer Games. But the other dynamic that's interesting is they're not coming in two waves. They're coming in one wave.
They are.
And the students or the athletes live in the athletes' villages that are scattered throughout the community, and the parents, I assume, are on their own renting hotel rooms and that kind of thing. So you and your board, have you done an economic study as to what the projected impact economically is going to be on the community?
Yeah, so we work with the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance, and they are kind of the experts in doing the economic impact. They do it in 3 phases. So kind of a bid phase, a mid-planning phase, and then they'll have people on site during the games speaking to locals, speaking to visitors to find out, how much money would you say you spent today? Did you visit a restaurant? Did you visit an attraction? And things like that. Off the top of my head, I should know this number, and I do not. So I won't even project to estimate it. We do hope that we will see an increased number of people in the hotels as compared to Western Canada Summer Games. And the reason for that is the kids are younger. They're 11 to 17, So if you look at a 16-year-old who can drive, they're taking themselves to practice. They're traveling on the weekends with their team. They stay in a hotel by themselves. 11-year-olds don't generally get sent on their own. They have a parent with them. And everybody's within Alberta. So all the participants are Alberta-based. Their parents can drive here. There's no flights required. While I wouldn't want to be driving from Medicine Hat in the wintertime, it is a realistic, opportunity for people to drive here. So we've tried to stay in close contact with the hotels to say, what is your occupancy rate now? From what I'm hearing from our hotel chair, hotels are starting to fill up. We are getting hotel bookings. But the thing is that a lot of athletes won't even know that they've qualified for the games until January.
Wow.
So, winter sports, you have to qualify in the winter. So some parents are tentatively booking and some are waiting. But we have provided the hotels kind of with a schedule to say, okay, this is when these kids will qualify, so that they have a realistic expectation of when they should start seeing some influx of registrations.
Not to jinx anything, but the oil price today is at the highest point it's been in 6 months to a year. Like it's so we could have this weird effect where all of a sudden the local economy picks up and accommodations could be interesting, which would be a good problem to have.
I would rather deal with full hotels and lack of accommodations than the opposite.
Amen, sister. My guest this morning, Michelle Toner, who's the general manager of the Alberta Winter Games coming up in February of 2018. We're going to take another break. You're listening to Impact on 91.1 The Bridge. And good morning. Welcome back to Impact on a crisp Tuesday morning. My guest, Michelle Toner. It's kind of like, it feels like a bit of a reunion. Michelle and I worked together for, 3 decades? I don't know, at Keanu, a long time.
That would mean I only started when I was...
What year did you start there?
I started in 2006, a year before the Syncrude Sport and Wellness Center opened.
Man, yeah. So
and this year was the 10-year anniversary of the Sport and Wellness Center, yeah.
When you think of your career track, did you ever think in your wildest dreams that you'd be doing what you're doing right now? Was it part of your dream?
No, not really. So I went to Dalhousie University in 1996, and that's where I started my university education and got a degree in kinesiology, and very science-based, thought about physiotherapy and things like that. But then I realized, I really don't have the patience for that. So worked in insurance for a little while in some injury claim management and things like that, and then realized that was not for me either, and took some time off and just lived life in the big city of Toronto, and realized that waitressing wasn't going to be my lifelong career either, and decided to go back to the University of Windsor for sport management. I was always drawn to sport, but grew up in a family of business owners. So I often say, coming from a small town, I'm from small town Cape Breton, you don't necessarily see what all the options are for a career in life. So I think, moving to Halifax and then moving to Toronto and to Windsor, which, you're a hop, skip, and a jump away from the Pistons and the Tigers and the University of Michigan and all of those great institutions, you really see that, there is a career in sport. And I thought, maybe I'll do professional sport. And a girlfriend of mine, she did her internship for our master's program with the Detroit Red Wings. And afterwards, they offered her a job. And I thought, oh, my God, that's awesome. She said, yeah, they offered me $21,000 a year. And I thought to myself, you make more working at McDonald's. And she said, yeah. So it was then I thought, maybe professional sport is not where I'll go. And then just 2 weeks before I finished grad school, I saw the posting for the opening of the Sport and Wellness Center, and I thought, you know what, this is a great fit. It combines fitness, athletics, business, the whole bit, and then it's just kind of been a natural progression with the events, and we hosted 7 provincial championships while I was at Keanu, 3 nationals. I wasn't there for the last one for the soccer, but I was involved in the writing of the bid and the starting of the process. So really linked to that championship and the event-based stuff, and I thought, yeah, this is my jam.
One final question, because we're almost out of time. When you look ahead to the games in February, what are you most looking forward to, do you think? What is going to be the high point for Michelle Toner?
I think opening ceremonies and seeing those 2,000 athletes just walking in to an outdoor venue, crisp winter night, music blaring, and the excitement on their faces. While as a community we do this for a reason, I think personally that's what I live to see. Those kids getting medals around their necks, making the new friendships, and then just really the pure innocence and enjoyment of sport. There's nothing like it.
It's going to be awesome. Where are you doing the opening?
It's going to be outdoors at the baseball field at Shell Place.
Cool.
Yeah, so we felt like it provided a more intimate environment. One, we could maybe control a little bit more than the baseball field in terms of the football field, in terms of wind and things like that. So, yeah, we've got some great surprises. And we're really excited. We're really excited about the opening ceremonies.
And when you go to church on Sunday morning, what are you praying for in terms of weather on that day?
We've prayed for a balmy -5, so we don't want slush or the snow to melt, but we want to make sure that people are able to get out that weekend and to see the opening ceremonies and not be freezing.
Okay, everybody that's listening, we need your prayers. -5 is the optimal temperature.
Please.
Michelle Toner, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for your leadership on what is going to be an amazing event for the community, the entire region of Wood Buffalo. You've been listening to Michelle Toner. She's the general manager of the 2018 Wood Buffalo Alberta Winter Games coming up in February. They're going to be amazing. And this is Impact, a team effort of United Way, Fuse Social, Shaw TV, Fort McMurray, and 91.1 The Bridge.